The catboat is probably the most generic American-designed sailboat. The catboats were workboats in the 1800s. They were handled by just, one man or a man and a helper. They had lots of reefs in it so that they could lower it down so that they could control the speed of it.
I mean, the catboats themselves have a great advantage over a lot of boats. Being working boats from the mid-1800s, they were popular because of the large cockpit, the shallow draft, with a single sail. They're relatively easy to manage.
You can sail most of the time with a 2-foot draft, and if you're in a shallow water area, it expands on the area that you have available for recreation and for anchoring too. It's kind of nice to be able to anchor in 3 feet of water. You won't be surrounded by racing sleds or anything like that. You'll have the area to yourself.
The boat is flat on the water, she's not heeling over. The catboat likes to sail on the bottom, and with a reach, she pretty much stays on the bottom. She just goes.
They were fishing boats, they were water carriers, they were the little boats that would bring water to your vessel if you were tied up to the wharfs in New Bedford or Boston or New York or wherever.
In the early days, there were 2 guys who took them fishing and might have gone on for miles. Sail control is obviously easy. It's self-tacking, so to speak. You don't have to take lines in to tack against the breeze. They're a wonderful, wonderful balanced boat.
My father grew up around catboats, sailing beetle cats around Bristol Harbor, and bought himself an old wooden catboat that he raced in Rhode Island in his late 20s and early 30s. And was just infatuated with the hull shape of the catboat.
There are very few people who can touch the helm of a boat and know what's wrong with it or what's right with it and make it go better. Breck was one of those folks. Breck was not a yacht designer by training, but he intuitively knew what was going to make a boat really perform well.
He got into fiberglass boat building in the late 50s, which was new technology at the time, and really wanted to incorporate that into his love of catboats. In the early 60s, he came upon a station frames of an old wooden catboat that he acquired and set them up and made some major modifications so that it could be built in fiberglass.
He would make changes in the lines of the boat. The shear line he changed, the bow entry he changed, the cabin house he changed, things like that he made changes to. That's how Breck sort of conceptualized and put the boat together. His biggest problem was he didn't want wooden spars because wooden spars are heavy because the bow of the boat had to be so full up forward to act as flotation to support that heavy wooden spar that was up there in the bow.
We were driving down the highway looking at the aluminum poles along the highway. So he pulled over and I looked around, and sure enough, at the base of it, there was a name of a company and a manufacturer. And when he got back, he called them up and he explained what he wanted. They said yes, we could do that, and that was the difference. The light aluminum as opposed to a heavy spruce made all the difference in the world.
And so that's how we came up with the aluminum mast. They're just basically street lamp posts.
Fiberglass was new technology at the time. A lot of the old wooden boat builders didn't trust it or weren't sure how long it was going to last.
Breck got a lot of blowback on the catboat. Everybody was poo-pooing fiberglass in those days, those damn Clorox bottles,
It was looked at upon very skeptically, but after a while, as we began getting more orders and building them, it became more and more accepted, and people wanted to get out of wooden boats. The maintenance on them, there's maintenance on fiberglass one too, but not as much as on the wooden ones. It's just grown.
Boat that the company started with is the Sanderling, the 18-foot cat, which is our middle-size catboat. Mostly a day sailor, although there's a cabin down below where you can do some overnights, or even some people have done some extended cruising on. We also do a 22-foot Cat, which came out in 1965. That's a bit more of a cruising boat. Inboard diesel engine is standard, galley, marine head with a holding tank, water tanks, good sized berths. Very comfortable boat for cruising. We also do a 15-foot Cat boat called a Sandpiper, which is primarily a day sailor, although it's been used quite often for racing these days.
It was a nice old traditional boat, and Breck loved them. Breck thought that that was a neat thing, and this has been his project for many years, was to see if he could come up with a glass boat to do it, and he did it with the Sanderling in '62.
I think what makes it so much fun is the way the boat handles under sail, and it just feels like it's 4 times the boat in terms of size and the weight and the way she sails and the ease of sailing.
He was towing a dinghy that was...
And the friends you make and the people you meet and the people who give you the high fives as you're going through this harbor or that. It just brings back that nostalgia that people have for this type of boat. And you don't make any enemies anywhere. You just make friends.
It'll be fun. So, anyone that can
There's definitely some eccentricities to cat boaters, which is, to me, is half the fun of it. Certainly I've been to plenty of boating events and regattas and rendezvous, and the spirit around the catboat rendezvous is unique and very refreshing in a lot of ways. I think people are very passionate about their boats and more than willing to talk about the boats and talk to each other on the boats. It's always fun to see 3 or 4 catboats all rafted up, and the group socializing, from one cockpit to the other, just showing each other the boats and seeing what they're doing with them. I've been in plenty of the harbors out here and in bigger boats and watched catboats sail into the harbor, sail right past the fleet, right up in shallow water, and find their own little private corner of the harbor and drop an anchor, and they're good for the night.
With your 2-foot draft Marshall 22, you can go way up to the head of the harbor, and you're all by yourself. You can go into Hadley Harbor or Quicks Hole or Tarpaulin Cove or any of these places, and you can get into areas where you can have a nice, pleasant, peaceful evening without the motorboats and the other boats hanging around, if that's what you like.
Well, you can get into almost anywhere, gunk holes or whatever. Like with our boat, it's only 2 feet draft, so you can even stick it on a beach if you want to.
Pretty much every harbor had something we would call catboat corner, which meant it was up far beyond all the other boats, and it would be shallow up there, and so the other boats couldn't go there, and we would have kind of our own space. It's really nice.
The cockpit is so large, you can take a lot of people, especially kids, enjoy it. Short sail right up to a beach, hop off, take a swim, hop back in, and off you go. It's just such an easy boat to sail. You don't need a large crew. You can go off by yourself.
Well, we used to go off cruising for 2 weeks at a time. We used to go out to the Cape, but go out there the first day. It's a long trip. And then it would take 2 weeks to get home. But just being out there when the kids were growing up and cruising for 2 weeks, I guess that's an adventure.
Some families went camping, which I thought was really weird. They had tents. We had an amazing time on the catboat. And for kids, at Cuttyhunk you can go ashore and you could walk up to the store and buy penny candy and all that kind of stuff. And kids love that.
I think for kids to get involved in catboats, it's a great way to get started in boating because quite often they're sailing with their parents or grandparents. It's a stable boat. A lot of kids will get a little scared when the boat starts heeling a bit, so the catboats are going to be a bit stiffer in that regard. But there's also a lot of room in the boat. It's a spacious cabin for its size. It's a spacious cockpit for its size. I think kids generally feel pretty comfortable with it.
My dad was always writing in the logbook. At the end of every day, he would write down what we did. We've got a pretty good history right there.
It's just part of my life, just going out there periodically. Especially when I was working and I needed a vacation, and just getting out there, all of a sudden I'm free. I think that's what the feeling is. We go where we want to go when we want to do it, you know. Freedom.
Performance was very important to Breck. He says there are boats that get out there that are be around for 4 or 5 years. People like them and then they discard them after a while. He said he needed a boat that was going to be around for a long time. And it's design that makes that difference. You know, if the hull isn't right, if the boat doesn't perform, if it doesn't really sail well, it's just not going to stick around. And I mean, look at 50 years that Sanderling's been out there. And Jeffrey's still selling them and building them. I mean, it's unbelievable. Nothing has changed since Breck laid it out in terms of the lines, in terms of anything like that. That's all the same. That's Breck. That's pure Breck.
Marshall, to me, when people talk to me, as far as I'm concerned, they're the Rolls-Royce of catboats as far as fiberglass catboats go. And it's a great testament and legacy to Breck's foresight.
Anytime I saw some other catboat, I figured that's some sort of fake catboat. That's not a real catboat. It's not a Marshall catboat. Been obviously evolved and thought through over generations of boats, and I'm benefiting now from the experience of hundreds and hundreds of my predecessors.
The one tradition I think that's been carried on all along is build the boats the right way. Make sure they're strong, make sure they're going to last, you know, and look for ways to make it a better boat. I think from the lineage of the catboat being a working boat, I think it gets sort of a bit of its ruggedness. I mean, I know hull number 1 of the Marshall 22s is still sailing down the Cape, and you know, the hull shape hasn't changed. It's still as durable as it was from day one. You know, I think it speaks well for his vision of what a fiberglass catboat can do to see this many built. I mean, all told, it's over 1,700 boats and still actively sailed, and you know, the enthusiasm level on the catboats is still very high. So I think he'd be quite excited by it.